Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in tonight. We're just waiting for a few more people to join in from our waiting room. Thanks for taking this evening to join us and talking about Farmerettes. So we'll begin momentarily. Oh, welcome everyone. I think we've got everyone in from the waiting room. If we have any stragglers, well, I guess we'll let them in and join in the festivities tonight. Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time this evening to join us. Everyone here at the Osgoode Township Museum and our wonderful guest speakers. My name is Shirleyan. I'm the Executive Director for the last couple of days of the Osgoode Township Museum. And I'm pleased to be joined tonight with our Education Officer, Caitlin McDougall, as well as our two guest presenters, Bonnie Sitter and Shirleyan English. We have some more people joining in from the waiting room, but we'll just get started on a quick introduction. So before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that the museum located in Vernon, Ontario, which is within the city of Ottawa, is on the traditional unceded ancestral land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. Algonquin Anishinaabe are the original inhabitants of this territory along the Ottawa, Rideau, and Castor rivers, and have lived on this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present on this land. For those who aren't familiar with the Osgoode Township Museum, we are indeed located off of Bank Street in the little community of Vernon, Ontario, and we represent the rural and agricultural heritage of the former Osgoode Township, which is primarily now geographically the Osgoode Ward. So we encompass little communities such as Vernon, Osgoode, Kenmore, Greeley, and small little hamlets that comprise of our rural heritage. Our site, we're fortunate to have a 3-acre site, which comprises of our beautiful main building, which is a 2-room mid-century schoolhouse, as well as a large agricultural barn, which houses a lot of our industrial and agricultural collection. We have a beautiful 10,000-foot heritage school garden, and an exciting project that we've been working on last year and into this year is a sensory garden as well. We were fortunate during the pandemic, beginning of pandemic in 2020, to develop our new permanent exhibit space. So when we do open to the public again, we're just taking a little bit of a break to do some early spring cleaning. We welcome everyone out to our site to visit both of our permanent exhibit space and our barn. And this is our barn here. It's a beautiful space built in the late 80s. And it houses, like I said earlier, a lot of our agricultural collection. So a bit about tonight. We're here with Bonnie and Shirleyan talking about Farmerettes. And a little bit about Farmerettes, but Bonnie and Shirleyan will delve into this more. From 1941 to 52, approximately 20,000 girls aged 16 to 18 enlisted in the Ontario Farm Service Force, ensuring that food would continue to be cultivated and harvested as they replaced the men who left farm labor to enlist for military service. Their motto was, "We lend a hand," and that they did, as well as bending it back. Hearing about Farmerette Camps, their accommodations, the work in fields, orchards, and vineyards, the fun and the experiences of women who were part of the group of people known as the Greatest Generation. About Bonnie. Bonnie Sitter resides in Exeter, Ontario, but spent 20 years in Deep River and enjoying the Ottawa Valley. After 40 plus years in the travel industry, she retired and found a new hobby with photography that led to co-authoring books. The Beauty and Bounty of Huron County, Agriculture Today, A Portrait of Family Farms in Ontario, Onion Skins and Peach Fuzz, Memories of Ontario Farmerettes, and On the Right Track, Memories from CPR School Car Number 2, have all proven popular, and she is planning for a book to be released in 2022. She enjoys reading, canoeing, cross-country skiing and cycling, and writing and her articles and photos are regularly published in the Rural Voice and often involve history with an agricultural flavor. Shirleyan English grew up in Northern Ontario, where her father worked for the Ontario Northland Railway. She attended high school in North Bay, and while there, volunteered for the government-run Farmerette program when she was 16 years old, spending a memorable summer working on a farm in Lambda County. That experience gave her a love of plants and working in the soil, which led her to becoming an accomplished gardener. She attended Western University, graduating in 1962 with a degree in honors journalism, and had a career of more than 30 years working for the London Free Press, plus public relations work for school boards in London and Peterborough, and freelance work. For about 40 years, she and her husband Doug traveled extensively throughout the world, including at various times visiting nearly every fort in Ontario and parts of Quebec. Louisbourg and Nova Scotia was a standout. She is past president of the Garden Club of London and the Garden Clubs of Ontario, and is a judge in both horticulture and floral design, both obtained through the Royal Botanical Gardens. She has competed internationally at the World Association of Floral Artists. An avid reader of a wide variety of fiction and nonfiction, she is also a devotee of crossword and jigsaw puzzles, and for many years was a busy curler. She is also a regular attendee at the Grand Theatre in London. Onion Skins and Peach Fuzz is her first book. And how you managed to fit that all in, Shirley. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share, and then we'll get Bonnie sharing in with her screen and her presentation.
Okay. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to do my share screen, and I'm going to do share. And my goodness, there it is. Wonderful. Okay. There we are. Okay. Oops.
Before you jump in there, Bonnie, I'm going to see if I can do just a quick poll before we get into things. We have a quick poll just to see how many people are joining us for this event. So if you don't mind just quickly answering that poll, everyone, that would be greatly appreciated. And sorry, Bonnie, we'll just
that's okay. That's perfect.
Tie in that poll quickly and we'll get started. Perfect. Wonderful. Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay. I just click the red button and it'll disappear then? Or do I click share results? What do I do?
You can just exit out.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to present our stories about the Farmerettes. Shirleyan and I are quite passionate about this subject, and it's really a pleasure to be invited to the Osgood Museum. We haven't been this far afield, even with Zoom, it's mostly been Ontario. So thank you for the opportunity. As you can see, I did put on there, if you want to purchase a book, you can contact me. I put the price on there, and book sales from this evening, if there are any, are shared between the authors. So you just have to remember one name. So as it says, our book is dedicated to the thousands of teenage girls who volunteered on the farms, orchards, and vineyards. And they did an amazing job. People thought and stated, how do you expect girls from cities and towns to know how to do farm work? But they proved all the naysayers wrong, and they did an amazing job. Okay, so now it's, oh, there we go. Okay, just to give you a bit of an idea, this is just a few of the places where the Farmerettes had camps. A lot around that golden horseshoe that they call it, when you see St. David's and Niagara Falls and Vineland. That's not the only place, of course. The Toronto airport area, that was all market garden farming at the time the Farmerettes were there. And you don't see Lambton, excuse me. You don't see Lambton County or Essex County, which were big farmerette places as well on this map, but just to give you an idea of what it's, of the area that we're talking about. So the cover of our book, and I'm going to just point out a few things about the cover. The front cover has 4 lovely girls on it, and Barbara Murray, who is second from the left, lives in Fort Frances. She's about 97 years old, and she gave us a photo album with lots of pictures from 1941 and 42. I mean, we were just blown away. I felt like I'd won the lottery when I found her and found that she had a photo album. There are 2 at that time that I found her in a really roundabout way. I won't go into that, but there was 2 ladies by the same name on the same street in Fort Frances. And it was quite a challenge to find Barbara. Beside her, we know the names of all the girls. They're listed in the book. And one of the girls had a nickname Torchy, and Barbara was known as Billy. So the girls like to take boys' names, and they like to name their accommodations. This tent was called Joyful Junk House. So I'm going to go ahead now to the next picture and tell you how I became interested in farmerettes. Three girls sitting on the running board of an old car. I was looking through my husband's photos after he died, and I came across this picture, and I thought, I don't recognize anybody, so I turned it over, hoping I was going to see names. No names, but there was a clue. It said Farmerettes about 1946. And when I started thinking about it, I thought, okay, so the sitters farmed near Thedford, and Conrad's sister-in-law probably gave this picture to him when the farmhouse was cleaned out, the parents had passed. And sister-in-law said, I'd give one of these pictures to Conrad. That must have been what happened. So since I didn't know anything about them, I decided that I had time to do some research and find out who they were. I collected enough material, and I met a friend who said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm researching farmerettes. And she said, would you like to speak to one? And I said, absolutely, I would like to speak to one. And I was connected to her mother, Noreen Pye Trevolgi, who had grown up in Toronto, and in 1946 went to the Niagara area, to Vineland, St. Catharines area, and she was a farmerette for the summer. The letters she wrote home, her parents had saved and given back to her. And at age 89 at that time, she's 92 now, she had carried those letters with her everywhere that she had moved. So I got to talk to her and learn more. I developed an article for a rural magazine called The Rural Voice. And through that article, a subscriber in London, Ontario, read the article, passed it to a girlfriend who then said, okay, I've read it. I think Shirleyan said she was a farmerette. I'll give it to her. Shirleyan read it, and then she wrote a letter to the editor saying that 1952, the last year of the program, she worked for the sitters. She dated their son, the man who became my brother-in-law, and it was still the best summer of her life. So that's how Shirley and I got connected through the sitter family. And these are the badges that the girls were given as the Farmerette program was established. And I'm going to get Shirleyan now to tell a little bit about how the program started. Go ahead, Shirleyan.
Okay, the Second World War started in September 1939. And by then, most of the crops in Ontario for that year were finished or being harvested. But farmers, always looking ahead to the next spring, must have been concerned, if not feeling some panic, when large numbers of the young men working in the farm labor force began to enlist. And so something had to be done immediately to ensure a steady supply of workers or there wouldn't be any fresh food the next spring. So the provincial government stepped in and established the Ontario Farm Service Force to recruit workers from all levels of society. And the first thing what they did in getting organized was set up 7 brigades. And these covered people in Ontario from 12 years of age up to 85. The 7 brigades, as I said, covered everybody, beginning with children 12 years old and up. But when they finished organizing all this, and by the time 1952 came, the largest brigade by far was the Farmerette Brigade. And that's for all young women 16 years of age and up. And their chief work was to be in fruit, vegetables, and truck farming or market gardening. And it went all the way through from the Women's Land Brigade, and that was people who lived on farms, women who lived on farms. And there was people who wanted to give up their holidays and work on farms, and a commando brigade for boys. For the teenagers, the commandos and the farmerettes, the recruitment was done through the schools and was quite ingenious. The field staff visited the schools, talk about farm work. Posters extolling the program were distributed, and announcements came over each school's PA system. And an inspired inducement for these students was offering them, at least those with pretty good marks, the chance to avoid writing the final examinations for the year, which were called the departmentals, by signing up for 13 weeks of farm work. Now, some teachers questioned this, since students would have to leave school by the end of May. But the thousands of students who eventually volunteered were delighted with the offer. No one wanted to write those awful examinations. So to start, I volunteered in 1952. It turned out it was the last year of the program, but I didn't know that at the time. I'm not sure anybody did. And our group of girls arrived in Thedford in 1952 by train from Toronto. We arrived in late afternoon and were taken to camp number 6, which was right in the village of Thedford. It was an old renovated flax mill covered with wood slats and housing more than about 100 girls from all over the province. A large room on the main floor included an eating area, a small lounge with a jukebox and a piano. There was a pass-through to the kitchen in the back. And alongside one side were bedrooms and offices for the house mother, the nurse, and the labor secretary. I can't remember where the cook slept, but I think she must have been local. In the back was the shower room, which was an absolute necessity, of course, and laundry facilities. The loos were outside behind the building. We girls slept upstairs in a large open room equipped with rows of bunk beds. Clothing was kept either on wall hooks or stored in a suitcase under the bed. It was definitely basic, but it worked pretty well. And we were all reasonably happy there. I'm going to give you just a few instances of letters we have received from people, and these are the little bits from some of the letters. Joyce McKinnon was a farmerette for 3 summers. She was in Beamsville, 1942, Winona in 1943, and Grimsby, which was called the Clovelly Camp, in 1944. The girls there slept in tents, which had wooden flooring. The toilets were outside, of course, but there was a large room in the main building where they could wash. As Joyce describes it, the girls were from everywhere. There were British war guests, 2 French Canadian from Mattawa, who were the first Canadians I'd ever met, as well as many girls from Southern Ontario. I have to say, she says, some of the townspeople were very distressed at the sight of these teenage girls walking around town in shorts. So we had to wear coats whenever we left the campgrounds, no matter how hot it was. Inchcumberland was another farmerette. And she says, I was one of those who at the age of 16 marched off to do battle with the fruit trees of Niagara in the name of saving democracy. Her camp was in Beamsville and was a collection of old army tents connected by a sidewalk. She said the dining area was in an old farmhouse. Well, although mostly, she said, we ate at picnic tables outside. And the food, courtesy of the YWCA, was wonderful. Although after a day of labor in the out of doors in those fields, we would probably have happily eaten hardtack.
Okay, Shirleyan, I'm going to tell them a little bit about the asparagus, okay?
Okay.
So as you can see, these girls are bending over and they're cutting the asparagus. And one of the girls wrote, cutting the asparagus was as backbreaking as the planting of it. Helen recalls, the vegetable was to be cut at a stipulated length, 6 inches with 1 inch underground. I swear that asparagus grew over lunch hour, for I recall going over the same field again one day. The girls prayed for rain so that they could retire to a nearby shed to enjoy some lemonade Mrs. Cornell's wife sometimes provided. Have I lost the ability? There we go. So these girls also are cutting asparagus. And the girls were to bring both bandanas and straw hats to work in the fields to protect their ears. So these girls have all got the bandanas on, and they had a special tool to cut the asparagus. It's mentioned in the book as well.
Here they are.
So they've got special platforms for this transplanting procedure in this field. Excuse me. And I think that the piping is held up by other piping, but I think that's the irrigation. It never occurred to me that they had irrigation back in the 1940s, but I think they did. So here we've got one grumpy foreman and lots of happy farmerettes. And the girl on the horse is Phyllis Herman, and her sister at her knee is Helen Herman, and they were from Clinton. There was 8 girls went from the Clinton High School in 1941, and they went to St. David's Camp at Queenston. So you see the bib overalls on some of the girls, and Helen has a harness that was worn by the girls when they were picking fruit off the trees. And then they had both hands available to pick the fruit. And this is kind of an interesting picture. I'd never come across anything quite like this before, but this shows pictures of what they called the doodle bug. And in the 1940s, during the war, it was difficult to get farm equipment. So a company in the United States, I think it was in Illinois, devised a conversion kit to convert a Model A or a Model T Ford into a usable farm vehicle. So these girls are showing off the doodle bugs, that was their nickname. And Mr. Shank in the lower left-hand corner is driving the doodlebug. And you can see one girl leaning over trying to haul the other girl onto the back of the doodlebug. And I think the girl that's doing the spraying, I think that's actually a doodlebug that's converted with a spraying apparatus on the back of it. She'd be spraying the fruit trees. When there's so many blossoms, they spray them to remove some of the blossoms. So a company in Aurelia went down to the factory that made the conversion kits and said, we'd like to be able to make these in Canada. And they said, well, just buy one and copy it. So that's how easy copyright was back in the 40s. So another picture, this is Peggy Burt. She's also on the cover of the book, and you can see how the basket hangs on her harness. And she's in the picture on the right in the middle as well. And these girls with their special scissors are cutting the grapes. So some of the girls were still at camp when the grapes were being harvested. Left-hand picture is a farmer's picnic at Huttonville Camp. And the farmers were treating the girls to a picnic, buying all that Coke. You can see the empty bottles on the table. The girls are all pretty happy. And the Coke bottles have a bit of an interesting story, because one of the farmerettes told us that the house mother said, when you hitchhike, always hitchhike with at least 3 in the group, and carry an empty Coke bottle with you. Anybody gives you trouble, you bop them over the head with the Coke bottle. So that was her solution. Top right-hand corner is one of the outhouses, and a lot of the stories do include stories about the outhouses. So you can see this girl obviously in her outfit showing off the toilet paper, the other girls lined up. But if you look carefully, and I hope you can see it because I can't see it because of the way my screen is set up, but in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little boy looking in and taking in the view of the girls. So there's another girl with them, but he's having a good day. Obviously, he's joining in on the fun. And the girls on the bottom, we have Barbara Murray, Barbara Wilson, and Peggy Burt on top of the outhouses. The largest outhouse seems to have been a 9-holer. And the next biggest was 7 holes of the reports that we got. Some of the girls actually named the outhouses, and at the A.W. Smith camp, the Miriam Carter from Teeswater, she said that they named their camps after famous hotels. So instead of saying they were going to the John, they were either going to the Park Plaza or the Royal York or something like that. So they all had fun with the outhouses. So the camp staff obviously appreciated, because girls took pictures of the camp staff on the left-hand side and on the right. And in the middle, the girls having their lunch. They made their own lunches. Of the fixings for the lunches were laid out on the table, and you made your own lunch. Occasionally, if you worked with a team, you took turns making lunches for all the girls. And if you didn't get there soon enough, some girls ended up with bread and butter, and they weren't too happy. But they made their own lunches, put them in the brown paper bag, and off they went with the farmer in the morning and ate the side of the field. Dogs come into the picture every so often in the stories as well. And this dog's name is Leo. This picture came from Barbara Wilson, but a farmerette that I found after the book was published, she had a story about Leo the Great Dane. And she said that she seemed to be one of Leo's favorites. And when she would get up in the night to go to the tent, to the washroom, Leo would crawl into her bed and wait for her to come back. So it's kind of interesting, the stories that I continue to collect, and the photos, and then they connect up with other things that I already have. So some pictures of the accommodation. So we've got Bum's Boudoir number 6. And this is a diagram that Noreen drew that was included in her letters home to explain to her parents where she was living. It's called a Nissen hut, named after a Mr. Nissen. And four bunk beds, orange crates to store your miscellaneous things, the cord that from the light that hung in the middle, and anybody that was any height at all, continually ran into that cord. but she included the towel racks and the windows, the door. So it was a pretty good indication to her parents, just even where the hangers and the towels were. And the picture of Noreen with the farm cat is the little one beside the diagram. Thedford Camp, top middle, that's where Shirleyan spent her summer of 1952. You see two girls standing at the windows on the upper level. And the farm truck there, that would have been one of the trucks that would have picked the girls up in the morning, taken them to the fields and then brought them back in the evening. On the right-hand side is the Larkin barn, and that was called 7 Up. You'll see 7 horseshoes above the door and a picture of the group of farmerettes. Bottom right, the building to the right of that picture is the camp at Cottam. And Shirleyan's going to read a letter or a portion of a letter written by artist Daniel, who supplied that picture. She was at Cottam in 1945. Tent in the middle was called Booby Hatch. And we do have the names of the girls of the farmerettes. Lots of the pictures we have no names, but that one is one of the ones we do. Although they don't say if it's first row or second row or left or right, but we do know the names of the girls. So girls that landed in Toronto, possibly by train from Northern Ontario, that wanted to get over to the Queenston or the Niagara area would take a ride on the SS Cayuga. And passage on the Cayuga was $1 each way at that time. And Diane McCracken, who lives in St. Mary's, I met her. She is 4th from the left, and she supplied the picture of the farmerettes on the Cayuga. So there was a restaurant. Families went on the Cayuga over to the Queenston area or the Port Dalhousie area, spent the day picnicking. They would, the baby carriages and the bikes and all sorts of picnic baskets all went on the Cayuga with them. In the evening, if you were returning to Toronto in the evening, there might be a live band, which live bands were really popular. This is the Rainbow Bridge as it was being built in the summer of 1941. It opened in the fall, and Barbara Murray took this picture and shared it with us. And if you were in the Niagara area at all, it was a must to hitchhike and find your way to Niagara Falls and have your picture taken there. So it was an adventurous summer. The girls, all 3 pictures, the girls are wrapped in towels after, I guess, a cold shower probably, because I'm sure the hot water ran out long before the bodies that needed to be washed ran out. The little girl in the lower left-hand picture, she's shorter than everybody else. Her name was Pee Wee Pagnini. And she got fined for talking after lights out. So the next day she thought she'd have a bit of fun, and she went out and painted library, fiction, nonfiction on the outhouses. And then they got their pictures taken with the towels wrapped around them, looking very exciting and dangerous, I guess. I don't know all the words you would use to describe it, but 3 different occasions pictures came. And Pee Wee is actually, her real name is Enid. And she lives in the retirement nursing facility in the Ottawa area. May of this past year, her niece phoned me and said, "I'm Pee Wee Pagnini's niece." And I thought, oh my goodness, I know that name from the book. And sure enough, it was Pee Wee. And she got on a conference call and she sang the song, one of the songs that the Farmerettes sang that year, and she could sing it as well as could be. Even though she was suffering from dementia, the Farmerette song was just there loud and clear. So it's been really fun to keep in touch with her and her niece. So Joan Tovey, we found her in a roundabout way. She lives up in the Buckhorn area, and a friend was in a gallery there, and she took a picture of an oil painting called Time Out. And she sent it to me, and I got in touch with the gallery and then found out who the artist was, found Joan. And eventually she sent me the black and white picture that she had used to paint herself and her girlfriend. They had come from Aurora to Thedford in 1946. And Joan said, I didn't change my hair. She said, I didn't want people to know that I had painted myself. But they spent the summer of 1946 at the Thedford Camp number 6, where Shirleyan later went. And you can see pictures of Joan and Peggy, top right-hand corner, and another picture of Joan in the lower right-hand corner. They stayed an extra 2 weeks after the camp closed, and discovered that when I had asked my husband's cousin what she remembered about the Farmerette, she said, well, not much, but 2 girls stayed after the camp closed, and they shared my bedroom with me. And these are the 2 girls that lived the extra 2 weeks at that home and shared the bedroom. They were off to art school, both of them. It was a 3-year art course in Toronto, and they both became artists. And this was painted about 5 years ago. Joan continues to paint and sell paintings, and very exciting. So I think Shirleyan's got some more comments to read. You've got some excerpts ready.
Okay. In 1945, Marjorie Howard remembers living at Camp Fenwick with about 30 girls, plus the camp staff and a staff mother. All things considered, she said, we were a happy camp with very few problems. She saved an official receipt for the 7 days board that the girls all were required to pay, $4.50, and a pay on envelope indicating that for 56.5 hours work during the week, she received the great sum of $16.95. But on the other hand, our camp won the Intercamp Banner for Camping Proficiency for the month of May 1945, she says. And one of these awards is among my souvenirs. The work for the girls was hard, often grueling. The sun was broiling. The pay was a pittance. But these teenage girls, most of them with no farming experience whatsoever, learned and persevered. They climbed ladders for cherries and peaches. They weeded celery, cucumbers, onions on hands and knees. They packed peaches and spent hours softly rubbing onions on wire mesh to remove the dried outer skins. They developed muscles and tans, and they helped save the harvest. I came to Thedford in the summer of 1952 from North Bay. When I was 16 years old, and I had just completed grade 12, I'd never worked on a farm. My first experience was weeding celery. And I remember being the only one working with this farmer that day. He picked me up in a very old car. And he had a tendency to meander all over the road as he drove. Another day, I was transferred to a cucumber patch where I worked with the other girls, weeding on hands and knees and trying to avoid the prickly stuff on the vines. Then I began working for the Sitter family, where the specialty was onions and peppermint. I remained with them the rest of that summer. There was Nicholas, whom we called Grandpa Sitter. There was William or Bill, his son, and a grandson, George, whom I ended up dating for most of the summer. Being from Northern Ontario, I had never seen a large farm field. My first sight of green onions marching in rows seemingly to the horizon, my jaw dropped. I thought they went on forever. We weeded them on our hands and knees, 3 rows at a time, straddling the center row. And after a while, it was on to hoeing peppermint, fortunately standing on our feet. Late in the summer, the peppermint was harvested and dried and became sort of like hay. The sitters had a large still in one field in which the peppermint was distilled into oil and sold to Wrigley's Gum at the end of the season. Then we went back to the onions, pulling them up by hand once they were mature, leaving them on the ground for the tops to dry. The next step, after a couple of weeks, was to softly rub the onions on a large sieve inset into a table-like structure. We did this all day with the chaff flying in all directions and all over us, into our hair, down our blouses, into our shoes, literally every nook and cranny in our body. At the end of the day, we were filthy and we rushed to the showers back at camp, racing each other for first spot. Next day, we did it all over again.
Thanks, Shirleyan. So on the screen, you'll see the border travel permit. So we know where Bessie Still was on May the 8th, 1945. And if you know your history, that's the day the war in Europe ended. So we know where she was. And Shirleyan's going to read where artist Daniel was on VJ Day in August of 1945. I had no idea you had to have a border permit, and this is not more than $10, of which not more than $5 may be in US funds, all these rules to cross the border. But the girls hitchhiked there and away they went, and not that they bought a lot when they got there, but it was a thrill to think that they'd actually done it. So Bessie is marked. You can see a little star snowflake above her. I didn't know Bessie's story in particular, or I didn't have these pictures, but when the book came out, her son said he knew his mother had been a farmerette, and he ordered the book. And then when he read the book, he discovered that his mother's letter was in there, because in 1995, Shirleyan had put out a notice that in newspapers across Ontario that she would like to write a story for a magazine about the Farmerettes, and Farmerettes could get in touch with her. She got about 300 letters. Most of them said, "What do you want to know?" or "Send me the questionnaire," or "Call me, I'd like to help." But she didn't get the article written. But when I found her and I found out she had letters, I said, "We are going to write a book." So that's how it happened. And of course, when he got the book, he found his mother's letter, and that was because she had written to Shirleyan in 1995. So once he got that, he sent me the pictures. So he hadn't read the date on the travel permit. He didn't know that his mother, what she had done on the day off. It was a Tuesday, so that we know it was a work day, but the boss gave them the day off. So we'll go ahead, Shirleyan, and you read what artist Daniel did on VJ Day.
Okay. VJ, I'm sure you all know that stood for Victory Over Japan. And I actually remember that day. I lived in Northern Ontario. We had a big parade and we all got out of school, well, although it was in August. But anyway, artist Daniels, who was at the Cotton Camp in 1945, and she and some other of the girls convinced their boss they should have a holiday. And as she says, I don't know what the rest of the camp did, but June Kettle, Doreen Muff Milford, Corona, and I hitchhiked to Detroit. We had 20 cents, 10 cents to go over, 10 cents to come back, plus our bagged lunches, which we ate sitting on the curb of the main street in Detroit. My mom was horrified because she expected us to be chaperoned. Can you imagine trying to chaperone that many girls? Today, Tody from Timmins was the only one I know who ran into any trouble hitchhiking, and she went alone, which was a no-no.
Okay, we'll go on. See the girls hoeing and the girls sort of goofing off, but anytime there was a photo op and there was a camera, the girls seemed to enjoy. They wanted to be able to show the families and the friends when they got home that they had spent the summer as a farmerette. It was really important to get a tan. As you can see, pant legs rolled up as high as they could possibly get them. So not a very clear picture, but a picture nevertheless that shows the farmerettes in a field at Thedford.
Yeah.
So the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see Miriam Carter munching. I think the shape looks like a pear more than a peach, but she wrote a little article for our book talking about when she was picking cherries, and the farmer said you can buy cherries and you can ship them to Toronto for like $1 a basket. So she chose, well, I'll ship a basket. My mom loves these cherries. And then she said, well, I'll ship more. And she ended up spending about $9, and a whole bunch of cherries went to her mother in the summer, and there was no refrigeration, no freezer to put them in. So she said, my mom ended up calling all around Toronto trying to find people that wanted cherries. And she said, I had spent all that hard-earned money. The gal in the middle is Helen, and she is bunching radishes. Don't hear much about radishes from the farmerettes, but that's what she was doing. And the one on the right, I think it's probably peaches that she's harvesting. So this is what a celery field looked like that Shirleyan would have worked on in the Thedford area. And you can see some young men helping here and some older men. The fields were huge, and Thedford was known for the bog area where the celery and the peppermint and the onions were grown. One man that got the book from me said that he lived near Thedford as a young man. And he said, I would be about 12. He said the farmers would come to a spot in Park Hill. And if you were there when the farmer came and he was looking for people, you could hop on the truck and have a ride back, and you could work for the day and earn yourself some money. What a crop of peaches. I'm just really thankful that somebody thought to take a picture of the crop that the girls had picked that day. Quite amazing. Here we are down in Essex, farmerettes with baskets of tomatoes that they have picked, and the farmer and his wife showing the harvest of the day. So the girls really did replace the male on the bottom is also picking tomatoes. And the one on the right is planting tomato plants. The Shanks had greenhouses where they grew the tomatoes, and one of the jobs was to get those plants into the ground. So this is my husband's grandfather, Nicholas Sitter, that Shirleyan knew and talked about calling him Grandpa Sitter. And there's about 8 farmerettes with him. And often the farmerettes would work for the same farmer for the entire summer. If he had worked for them, Grandpa Sitter is probably the one that was meandering all over the road, giving Shirleyan a ride to the field. In later years, when he got to be 90, they let the air out of his tires, so he couldn't go anymore. So this is the job that Shirleyan talks about, where the onion skins comes into the title. The girls are rubbing the onions over the sieve to clean them. And the girls on the left probably had spent the previous summer there. They knew enough to put gloves on, because when the chaff and the dry soil flew, it was in your ears, up your nose, down your blouse, everywhere you could think of. And same with the girls on the right. They're probably first year at Thedford, not knowing that they should have glasses to protect their eyes. Fun thing happening here, the sign says no admittance, and yet we've got 3 girls climbing the fence. We've got another one taking the picture. Barbara Murray gave us this picture, and these are the girls that shared a joyful junk house tent with her. They're off to the Welland Canal. You can see up at the top the picture of the boat going through the canal with the vintage cars on it. And they record sunning themselves at the edge of the canal when the swim is finished. Canal's 50 feet deep there, and therefore the sign was up, no swimming. but they did it anyways, and didn't hear of anybody drowning. So I guess they learned to swim that summer if they didn't know before. Merit's contribution to Canada's war effort. We know that they were recognized with a certificate during the war years. This was 1944, Rita Coyne. And I just found Rita about 6 months ago. She lives in Georgetown, so that was pretty exciting. A couple of souvenirs on the right. Betty lives here in Huron County, and she went from Windsor to Cotton, which isn't a big distance. But when she got her ticket and her instructions of what camp to go to, she saved the baggage tag. And bottom right, we have Barbara Murray, who took papers that would have been packed with the celery at the Shank farm. And she made it into a little autograph book in 1942, and she got Mr. Shank to autograph it. So kind of fun souvenirs that the girls came up with. So you may think there's just 3 girls hitchhiking in that picture, but there's really 4. Count those arms out with the thumbs up, showing off their pretty tanned legs, hitchhiking. Gloria Carter on the right-hand side of the picture lives in Guelph. And she recently traveled to Ottawa to the War Museum to see anything that was on display for the Farmerettes. And she's pretty excited that we're on a mission now to try to get Canada Post to issue a stamp to honor the Farmerettes. The girls talk about doing laundry. This one's actually doing the laundry and rinsing it. One girl said that at Thetford, lots of the girls just let their overalls just get so dirty and smelly with onion juice that they practically stood up by themselves, and they simply got into them again the next day, and away they went to the farm to work. Now we have Helen Herman from Clinton. She's a pretty girl at the back with the glasses. We don't know the other girls' names, but her family shared this picture. And Shirleyan has a little story to read about, this is at Camp St. David's in the Queenston area. Go ahead, Shirleyan.
Okay. One of the Farmerettes was Bernice Beeman in 1941. She was at this same camp at St. David's. And as she describes it, she said there was no shower, no bathtub. There were big sinks and 2 metal baskets. And we think the metal baskets were these tubs that you could fill with water and get into if you wanted to go to all that trouble. Somehow you had to get rid of the water afterwards. And this was not a nice private room for washing up. It was an area under the barn. It had always been open, but this wasn't a time for modesty. Beyond that, there were about 4 outhouses. She says also that we had a collie dog named Soldier that arrived and adopted us and always walked with us if we left the camp. Later in the summer, some official folks came to check the camp and said we had to get rid of the dog. That was hard for all of us. We had to stay at the camp for 8 weeks, but I stayed until the day before school started, 13 weeks, and I didn't want to go home.
Okay, thank you. So newspapers, you can see 1942, the Bowman News, that was Bowmanville, and local girl describes life at Farmerette as wonderful. Lots of newspaper coverage encouraging girls to come and try the camp life. I mean, one of the hooks was that it was called camp, and a lot of girls were never ever going to get to camp. So this was an opportunity. Adventure awaited for sure. And the other hook was that if you had good marks, you could leave school early and not have to write exams. So the girls did drive tractors, and they did drive a team of horses here. We've got Peggy Burt on a spraying machine in the orchard at the Trigano farm. We're not sure if the girl on the top right is washing her feet or just soaking them because they're sore. And the girl on the bottom right enjoying a break from the picking the fruit. So Farmerettes at Ipperwash Beach, that's south of Grand Bend, south of the Pinery Park, if you're familiar with that area of Ontario. They've got the camp mother with them there. She's the probably the labor secretary in the shorts and the camp mother in the skirt. and the farmerettes enjoying the water. If the farmer had gas, he could take them on a Saturday or a Sunday and let them enjoy the water. And sometimes at the end of the day, he would take them and they could wash the grime of the day and leave it in the lake. So labor secretary was hired by the YWCA when we were doing the book, and I was contacting the Y. I didn't get any help from them at all, which was pretty disappointing. But we do have proof that they were a big part of why the program was a success. Excuse me, a success. Girls at the right, we've got a girl with her legs wrapped around the headlight, and a girl that was at Thedford Camp said that was the preferred place to ride to and from the field, but you had to be quick if you wanted a headlight. So there we have some girls on tractors. That was another thing that was important. If you could get a tractor into the picture and show the people you really were on a farm, it was a mark of success. And these people, this was a mechanical device that the people sat on at Thedford, and they would be planting the seedlings. So they've got a local boy there helping, but you do see the farmerette bib overalls, pants rolled up, and you can see where the badge was as well. Bit of fun, the girls, there was Miss Farmerette contest, but these girls devised Mr. Farmer contest. And at the picnic, they chose Mr. Farmer, and the way he was chosen was the size of his feet, his tan, and the calluses on his hands. That proved to be the winner for the Mr. Farmer contest. So we know Alan Donald has a real cigarette, but we think the farmerettes probably have candy cigarettes. And I think they're on their lunch break. They've got the black lunch box with the thermostat tucked into the lid. Alan Donald's wife, Doris Donald, is still alive, and she's about 92 and lives in Thedford. She shared that picture with us. There was general farm work done as well, and you can see there's a girl posing in the hay. The trucks that took the girls to the farms, to the acreage or the fruit trees or whatever to work, also took them to other camps on occasion or into town. So this was from the Cottam camp, and they're not going to work. They've got their nice clothes on, their nice sandals and whatnot. So they would be off for an evening at another camp or in town. So there's the greenhouses and the girls bending over, planting. The girls riding to work in the Darcy crop truck. And you see the one girl has her brown paper bag lunch in her hand. So we're at coming up to the end. We've got Darcy Crop, a really well-known farmer and owner of canning factories in the Niagara area. There is a street named after him in Niagara Falls. And the girls that went to St. David's had nothing but praise for Darcy Crop. They said if the weather was bad and there was no work, then he had a make work program for them because he knew that they had board to pay. So I think Shirleyan has something to read for us now. Doreen's story.
Yes. This letter was written by the daughter of one of the farmerettes. And as she says, my mom was an onion skin and peach fuzz girl. In the winter of 2018, my sister Lori and I volunteered for the task of going through mom and dad's photo albums and documents as part of their estate. One of our treasured discoveries was love letters in envelopes with 4 cents Queen Elizabeth stamps. Dad had written to Mum while she was away at normal school in London, while he was working in Shakespeare, Ontario, which was another surprising and curious discovery. Came to us in one of the 4 old photo albums. My mum was Doreen Elaine McKicken Wilhelm. And she was born in 1931 in St. Vital, Winnipeg, Manitoba. She grew up during the war years, and her dad served as a corporal in the Royal Canadian Air Force. She grew up during the war years. Oh, I said that. Mom's mother died a tragic death on the very day of Pearl Harbor when my mom was just 10 years old. This death set in motion a series of moves for my mom, from one aunt and uncle's home to another, to living with her grandparents while her dad was on the Air Force base. Mom moved to Ontario when her dad remarried in 1945. Mom had a new home in a new province with a new step-grandmother, a stepmother, and a stepsister in a new hometown, attending a new high school. How bewildering. It must have been one spring day in 1946, sitting in her classroom at Glencoe High School. She saw an ad or heard a speaker for the Ontario Farm Service Force, recruiting girls to be part of the war effort. I can only imagine what led Mom to sign up. You see, she never talked about those years. So when Lori and I discovered 3 old photo album pages of black and white photographs, one was entitled Farmerette Camp, we were perplexed. Details of wooden fruit baskets, austere structures, outdoor settings, and posing young women who were staring back at us. What were these photographs telling us? Who knew? Inquiries of our families led nowhere. But there was something about these old photographs that wouldn't allow me to skip over them. I was so intrigued and so full of questions. What was this red, white, and blue Farm Service Force badge? Did you wear it with pride, Mom? Who did you lend a hand to? Why, Mom, are you sitting on a haystack? Why are you with a group of other teens holding canned peaches? And what is this Camp Huttonville and Camp St. David's labeled here? So I was curious, and I Googled Farmerette, which led me to Bonnie Sitter and her amazing research. And after hearing one of Bonnie's presentations and reading Onion Skins and Peach Fuzz, I realized my mom was a farmerette and just what it meant. She had been an onion skin girl in Huttonville Camp from July 12th to August the 31st, 1946, and a peach fuzz girl at St. David's Camp in 1947. Her album page showed the dormitories, the farm setting, the packing house, the orchard truck, tired working girls, and many smiling faces. And Mom was there, smiling about among them. I was astonished to uncover a part of my mom's history that was unknown to us. The Farmerette chapter is now a best-loved piece of family history. I was happy to know that Mom had found a community of fellow pickers who had known her and laughed with her and supported her. And I was proud, so incredibly proud, of her genuine contribution toward the saving of thousands of tons of food that meant life to millions of people in liberated Europe. I'm also convinced that her summers at those camps helped form Mom into the giving, generous woman who was such an active volunteer in her United Church community for all of her adult life, leading to being president of the United Church Women for Hamilton Conference. If Mom were here today, I'd ask her, tell me, Mom, of the summers of 46 and 47. Tell me what it was really like to be an onion skin and peach fuzz girl. And I'd say, thank you, Mom, for your hard labor and true commitment. For all of those young girls who worked as farmerettes, we thank you. You were hidden heroes. Now you will always be heroes, known and honored. This was respectfully submitted by Doreen's daughter, Diane Elizabeth Rath.
Thank you, Shirleyan. That's a wonderful story.
I have a hard time not tearing up when I read that letter. Anyway.
Yeah. So we've come to the end. I hope we haven't overstayed our welcome. I hope you've really enjoyed our presentation. These pictures that I've shown and the stories we've told only really scratch the surface. We have so many more stories and so many more pictures. I continue to collect stories and pictures. So if you know of anyone that was a farmerette and would like to share their stories, I think every story is important and I would love to hear from them. So I'll stop sharing, and if you've got some questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them. If I can escape from this, it's not letting me escape. There we go. Okay.
I just wanted to say a very heartfelt thank you to you, Bonnie and Shirleyan, for being able to share these stories of the Farmerettes experiences. And like you mentioned, your book has allowed recognition to these young ladies and women who work so hard and very under-acknowledged until now about their service, in the war effort. And it's so wonderful to be able to see that being brought to light. So we really appreciate all of the work that you've done to bring those stories to us tonight. And we do have a few questions in the chat. So, if everyone is still keen on exploring those, we have a couple of terrific talks. Thank you very much. We have one question here. Can you tell us about any of the Farmerette camps that would have been in the Ottawa area? I think there is a little bit of a local connection to Osgood and Ottawa, if you have that story to share.
Yeah, we have a story, and it was called Dr. Barnhart's Farm. And the girl that submitted it to Shirleyan back in 1995, she talked about, riding from her place, out to the farm and learning to grow vegetables, and then selling them to the neighbors and supplying food to neighbors as well as their own family. But it was really mainly in the Niagara, the Golden Horseshoe, and Lambton and Essex. That's the only story that we've got that comes close to Ottawa. So it was Dr. Barnhart, and maybe that's a name that through your museum. Was he a well-known man? I don't know. He must have been.
We did some research with the assistance of a local historian, Michael Daly. I think he's on the call with us. But we believe it was just south of Manotick, so that would have been within the former Osgood Township. But we haven't been able to find too much more than that at this time. So, I mean, we would love to hear more stories if anyone, if it sparks a memory or a thought. That'd be wonderful to share those stories. And we do have a few copies of the books available at the museum as well too, and it shares Jean Gallant's story, and she was the one who was Dr. Barnhart's Farm. Another question we have here: were there similar programs in other provinces?
British Columbia had a program, not nearly as extensive as Ontario, but we recently had a young lady from Saskatchewan get in touch with us because she discovered her grandmother had been a farmerette and had been in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. So the girls came from Quebec to Ontario to work. And the ones from, I guess, probably Saskatchewan and Alberta went to BC to help with the fruit and the vegetables there.
Wonderful. And I don't see any other questions, just some wonderful comments. And I was in the same boat. I had not really heard much mention of the Farmerettes prior to this. What a terrific story and wonderful experiences for these ladies.
Mhm.
Well, it's been an absolute blessing, a privilege to discover. I mean, who would think that a black and white photo could change your life, but it did. Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience for us, and we're really excited that it is being developed into a play. And Fourth Line Theatre near Peterborough expects to have it on stage by 2024, and Blythe, Ontario, 2024, maybe 2023, because they constructed an outdoor stage last year. And so the chances may be for Blythe to have it first, but it'll have the same title as the book.
Oh, wow. Oh, great. One comment here, the Farmerettes deserve their own stamp, definitely. And is there somewhere where we can help with a push? Maybe there's, some support we can offer to help initiate the stamps?
Yes, contacting your MP, any senators that you know, historical societies, museums. If they want to get in touch with me, I'll tell them who to contact, and I'll send them some sample letters. But we are getting some good response, and I don't see how they can ignore it. The Farmerettes have been ignored for too long, and I think it's time that the government says, yes, they did replace the men. They did help produce the food that was so necessary. That badge from 1943 said "Food for Victory." They knew how important food was. That men can't fight if they're not fed. And the people in England had, their economy had been ruined. They were desperate for food. They begged for Ontario to send them as much food as they could. I mean, not just the canned fruits and things like that, but bacon and lots of other products. There was a program called Jam for Britain, and the culinary historians of Canada have a presentation on that. If you're looking for something interesting, that was a good program too, people making jam.
Wow. One great comment from Sarah. Thank you. Always great to hear what women were doing, as usual, a lot.
I remember my mother doing that, the jam. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see any other questions, but again, I just wanted to extend our sincere thank you to Bonnie and Shirleyan for presenting tonight. And it's so wonderful to hear the stories that we don't get to share at the museum all that often. And we hope that everyone enjoyed their evening, and maybe we'll share Bonnie's contact information if she's comfortable with that for anyone who might have some stories to share with them.
Yeah, I keep collecting obituaries. People send them to me. This lady died last December, and in her obituary it says, a World War II Kingsville farmerette who walked across the Ambassador Bridge on VJ Day to kiss American soldiers. So that's a smile to end our program, and thank you again for inviting us and allowing us to tell you about the Farmerettes.